So I was wondering if you had any tips on dealing with criticism that comes to you via email.
Email.
Email, yes.
Or email or texting, we might throw in there also. I mean, one of the young people during the break said, I don't ever talk to people face to face anymore. It's all through texting. So, yeah, no, this is a very important question.
You know, when we were doing the book, and I swear to you, we were within 3 weeks of going to press. And our editor said, oh, there's nothing in email here. So we did this real quick reach out to people who we knew had great email practices. We asked them what they were, and we did a content analysis to see what things kept coming up. So let me give you a couple of things specifically, because this could be responding to something that you asked about responding to criticism. I would put it even if you're raising the issue. But first of all, in terms of email, don't do it if you're feeling that adrenaline rush that we talked about in here. Just don't do it. And if you just have to get it off your chest, so you want to write it, you want to write your response, then at least put your name in the to bar, because whatever else happens, you do not want to press send on an email where you're feeling agitated. Okay, so then I would say get as conscious as you can. Now, you don't have that feeling again, but you could ask questions, you could do many of the things we talked about in here, but here's the thing. Once an email conversation goes relational, email is so great for sharing information among a lot of people, but it stinks when it comes to sorting out and unraveling relationship issues. So the second it feels like it's gone beyond content and now it's more about relationship, go. If you can't go face to face, I would recommend go voice to voice. And one other recommendation is don't do it in caps and don't underline it. So that's, were you thinking of something else?
Well, I was just going to add that we worked actually with a Portland trading company whose clients or sister companies were overseas to the point where they could not go voice to voice, and they were killing each other through email. I mean, they were being so unkind to one another, they were costing each other sales across the oceans. And they learned this program, and they use it, and it works.
And all they can do is email. So thank you for that,
Yeah,
Kim.
thank you, Kim.
Thank you. Yeah.
Our next question comes from Chris Schonger. Chris, come on up.
Hey, Chris.
Hey, Chris.
In responding to criticism, do I apologize?
Apologies.
Okay, this is really important. And thank you for asking that, because on some level, Peter and I were just talking about this. Apologies can be one of the most high impact, relationship transforming communications you have. On the other hand, apologies can seem empty and worthless. And very often it depends on where the apology comes. If the apology comes right after the criticism,
Which it often does.
then it seems empty.
Let's just quick demonstration, the example you've been observing. Susan will now hit me with the same opening line, and watch what happens if I move to apology too quickly.
So Pete, let me just get right to the point. You are undermining my credibility by talking to other people about me and not talking to me first.
I'm sorry.
Really? So the next 5 times you hear an apology, analyze it in this way. If the apology comes after deep, curious listening, so let's say I was just criticized And I pause, I ponder, I paraphrase. I might even say, can you tell me more? I ask for details. I find points to agree with. And then at the end, I say, I am so sorry. I had no idea that I was having that impact on you. Please accept my apology and it will change. That is a moment in time that can change our relationship forever. And it's so different than the one where the apology just comes so quickly. Because when the apology comes too fast, at the relationship level, it's almost like saying,
Let me out of here. I'll say anything, just let me go.
yeah,
Yeah,
thank you. Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And our third question comes from Kisa O'Quinn.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
People have described my communication style as being too direct, too bossy, or too aggressive. And I'm wondering if the perception might also be impacted by the fact that I'm African American and female. What can I do about that?
Okay.
A very important question, both for African Americans and for women and for anybody who's ever been described in the way you did. And one of the things that we believe, let's just take what we talked about so far regarding raising issues, okay? So let's think of it as a continuum. Some of us, and I'll join you on this end, some of us have been accused of being too demanding, too controlling, too bossy, intimidating. I mean, you can fill out the words. And that's our excess that we need to figure out how to deal with so that we can have maximum impact. But I want you to know that there's another end of this continuum over here. And those are people who are perceived as undercutting themselves. These are people who are shy and who are quiet and who are almost subservient to their own wishes and their own needs. And these are people who sometimes, and Peter and I, by the way, have worked with shyness from the time we were in graduate school. Dr. Phillips, it was his area, and so we've worked with shyness a lot. And so people on this end of the continuum who just don't even know how to begin a conversation.
Sometimes people on that end of the continuum raise an issue and the other person thinks they've apologized.
Right. So now the question is, and I'm going to start with your question, but I'm going to answer that one too. So the question is, what can I do if people's experience of me is hostile, aggressive, controlling? Let's start with the model itself, and I'm going to put this out as a kind of question. What are the steps that, if I'm a person who is experienced as hostile and aggressive and controlling.
Not hostile, but direct.
Overly direct, demanding. I'm just adding words.
Yeah.
What do I need to force myself to remember to do? Because it's unnatural and I might leave it out. And let me tell you, the key places are, number one, to be able to share those vulnerable feeling statements. So instead of saying, you're rude and dismissive, to be able to say something like, I was embarrassed at the meeting when. So one is to convert you accusative into I feeling. Another very powerful move for people on this end is the one that says, hey, listen, I know I'm part of this problem too. I could have told you earlier that. I didn't realize that when I said this, it happened to you then. The more I can take personal accountability, the less the other person sees me as demanding and intimidating and aggressive. And finally, when I'm trying to ask for behavior change, to not forget to go first, to say, here's something I could do different than I'm doing now, and here's something I think I could do better. And then that part that says, is there anything else you'd like from me? That's a real key too. So it's really hard to change some of the deepest, scariest perceptions that some people walk through life with. And I don't want this answer to make it seem like, well, all you have to do is steps 1, 3, and 4A and everything will be fine, because you're getting at something that's much deeper than that. I do think that that is one way to begin changing and shaving away at that perception. Now, I do want to also go to this end of the continuum, because this is a group of people that we've spent many years working with. What do you do if you're the kind of person who doesn't want to rock the boat, doesn't want to make waves? As Peter said, when you raise an issue, sometimes people think it's an apology. What can you do to amp up your presence and consequently your impact? Those would be some different steps. For one, pinpointing details, being very concrete and very specific about, this is what happened, this is what you were saying, and this is the impact it had on me. And also the part of the solution that says, here's what I am asking of you, and doing that in a very straightforward and concrete way. Now, I want to be certain that I don't end this piece with a misperception. I am not saying that if you tend to be perceived as more aggressive and demanding, that you should do steps 1, 3, and 4A, and all the other people should do steps 2 and 4B. That is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the reason the Raising Issues model has been so powerful for so many people is because really it's bringing together two really different sets of skills, a set of skills that are very assertive and very clarifying, with a set that are very relational and very respectful. And I believe that's where the power comes in merging both of those. Thank you so much for that question.
Such a good.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you so much for taking my question. I'm really concerned about those conflicts that have a really long history. How do we deal with something like that?
That's a good question.
Conflicts that have a history are very scary for people. And I'm going to just give a couple of thoughts about that. Someone has to go first to try to de-escalate. And one thing you can say to just create a moment around it is to say, I've had a few events happen in my life recently. You could say I went to a communication thing, or you could just leave it at I've had a few things happen in my life recently. And it got me to thinking that it's really important to me to try to figure out what's gone wrong and make it right, because I really care about my relationship with you. Now, this would vary. I mean, if it's a work relationship, it would be different than if it was a friend from a long time ago. But again, remember, this is about making conscious choices.
And I'll tell you, the fail-safe in this is when they start talking to you, no matter what comes back at you, to become a great listener. Listening is always the default strategy whenever you're dealing with a situation, whether it be a long-term one as the one you're asking about, or a short-term one. You move right into really great listening, because that's the connector that can move the relationship forward. It's not an easy answer to a question, your very difficult question, but it's the way you begin to chip out that long-term bad feeling.
And I would really think through ahead of time what you're going to say. And then in the end, as Peter mentioned, we actually have a colleague who works primarily with groups that are absolutely at loggerheads. And her recommendation is, when all else fails, stop talking and keep listening. And so it might take a while. And I would really perhaps initiate it with a perception check, because that's a softer way to get the conversation going. And I would so give it a try. Why not, if you care about it?
Yes.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What's the best way to open a conversation with someone that doesn't want to have a conversation about delicate issues? I'm thinking about my teenager that just disappears into her room, and it's really hard to get her out to have a conversation about things that need to change in the household. Or
Yes. These are really hard questions. You know,
Thank you.
when our daughter was 15 years old, I used to start our programs in conflict resolution by saying the things we teach work for everyone except adolescent teenage daughters.
But now we realize we weren't as engaged as we could have
No,
been.
we were not good listeners, is where it went wrong.
Right.
And the one breakthrough I had with Megan when she was that age was when I had a hernia operation, and I was in the kitchen, and I just sat down on the linoleum floor at the time. That's what we had.
Because you were feeling like you needed to sit
Right,
down.
because it was hurting. And she walked into the room, she looked around, she saw me down there, and she plopped down next to me and started asking me questions, and I was answering her. And then she stood up and she said, "Dad, this is the best conversation that we've had in years." And then she left. And I'm thinking to myself, I didn't even say anything. But I did listen to her, and I was planted there. And I mentioned this to her, and this is really the truth. I mentioned this to her about a month ago. She remembered,
She remembered that from all those years.
And it really, the message came through to me that, again, the mode of operandi when you're in a tough situation and you're not sure what to do is to really find opportunities to just be around them and to just give yourself over and listen intently. Because as soon as you move into lecture mode, we've all been there, they're gone.
And that's what I was thinking about too. I think when people, teenagers, but other people, you're right, resist us, it's because of the pain of the processing. And I think when you have people in your life who just don't want to talk about it, then when they do, you have to figure out a way to make that be pleasurable and not painful. Whatever it takes, you need to think that one through. Because people who hate processing expect the pain, and if you give it to them, that's their last time to do it. So that's a piece of it too. And I know that a number of people wrote about teenagers and toddlers, and do you ever think about this or talk about this? And I do want you to know that every Tuesday, we publish a communication capsule. It's like a blog. We have a team of researchers who really look at communication research. And we now publish, a lot of it is organizations, but it's also relationship, and we've done a whole bunch on children. And so I really would invite you, you can go to our website, theglazers.com, and if you want one delivered to your email, you can just tell us and give us your email address, and you'll have a communication capsule every Tuesday from us. Thank you for that question. It is important to so many of us.